What's going on, awesome people? Welcome to another episode of Awesome People. It is Wednesday, September 20th. My name is Iman Hushman, and for those of you that might not be familiar with Awesome People, it's basically a little conversation that I get to have with Iranians that inspire me, that motivate me, that get me excited to get up each day and be better and do better. And there's certainly no shortage of awesome Iranians that are working incredibly hard and so passionately in making an impact in their community and making an impact globally. And my guest tonight is certainly somebody that is making some major waves, and it is my pleasure to have her as part of the conversation tonight. Her name is Dr. Azadeh Khatibi from California. You have no idea, like this individual, her bio is so not just impressive, but it's so diverse. It's so beefed up that I would not be able to do it justice by even giving her a proper introduction. But I will tell you that in addition to being a physician, she's an ophthalmologist. In addition to actually optometrist, ophthalmologist. She's gonna kill me for this one. I have to look back. Anyways, but she's definitely an eye doctor, and she is an author. She is a filmmaker. She is a what do you call it? Like she's like a mentor. She is somebody that is suing the state of California for some of the most important things that like normal people will just kind of accept. She refused it. She refuses to let censorship happen. She is a mother of two children. Honestly, she's a Shirzan. She is literally what you would expect an Iranian woman to be. There's so much of who she is that I've briefly gotten to know that I'm just honored and excited to share with you all and honestly learn from her, because it's an inspirational person that has really been doing a lot of great things for the freedom of speech, and that's a very important thing for sure. And as Iranians, I feel like we now especially are really appreciating and not taking for granted these privileges that we have that our countrymen in Iran don't have. And that's why we keep on fighting for this woman life freedom revolution. And I'm just excited to get to know Dr. Khatibi right now a little bit better. So we're going to bring her in, and I'm looking forward to having a very all-encompassing conversation with her. So be from California as we uncover all the greatness that she is.
Hello. Hi. سلام درود. خوب هستی؟
So great to virtually meet you. First time that we're connecting in any capacity, and I appreciate you making time.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have a great conversation and create more connection and grow the community and spread awareness and inspiration and awesomeness in the world.
For sure. You've been a busy bee, not just in the past few months with suing the state of California, which is not a very light feat by any stretch of imagination, but there's just so much more to you. And it's just pretty amazing that, like, I want you to actually give a little bit of a nutshell background for those who've never gotten the pleasure to meet you, so that we can kind of get the ball rolling in that regard, and then we'll start peeling back the layers of the awesomeness that you have.
Great, sure. Well, I was born in Iran, and I immigrated here when I was very young, about 6 years old. And so I grew up in Southern California, did my thing, and thought that, what happened in Iran stayed in Iran. Of course, years later, I found, no, this stuff, you carry it with you. The war, the trauma, the revolution. I did very well in school, and I was deciding between becoming an actress or becoming a doctor, and I couldn't make that decision. It was really hard. And ultimately, I decided I couldn't, and I was so idealistic. I was like, I can't go to work every day and not have a guarantee that I can help someone. That was kind of the major decision maker for me. I was like, I have to go to work every day and have a guarantee. And if I become an actress, there's no guarantee. So I decided to become a doctor. But even then, I was still doing taking classes and doing the acting thing, going on auditions.
Let me pause you for a second,
Sure.
just because on this thing right here, were you looking at it and as a stress reliever, as a kind of way out to kind of do the acting, or was there inside of you a part that said, you know what, I might actually also be able to make it big in the acting world and make it an impact? Like, how were you viewing that fork in the road?
I I like them both. I thought they were very different things, and I had to do one or the other. I didn't think that I could do both, right? And I didn't have like a lot of examples of people doing many things, especially doctors. Now, of course, now I know there's doctors who are concert pianists. There's doctors who are amazing artists. You know, there's doctors who own gyms. Like you can do and be multiple things. It's allowed. It's okay, as long as you know you're holding a certain standard and quality, of course, in patient care delivery. But you have to follow the, what's inside of your deep inner knowing. And so my deep inner knowing was also pushing me in this way for various reasons, some of which don't really have a huge hold on me anymore, right? Like the need to be validated by other people, the need to be seen. I think a lot of actors have that, right? And so I don't have that anymore because I've done a lot of inner work. So now it's more about just creating great work. Same thing with being a doctor. I think a lot of people sometimes go into being, and I'm an ophthalmologist. They go into medicine because there's a set path and there's a known, you just really, really, really work hard and then you get to this goal. And then you have some level of guaranteed stability and financial stability and also just community standing, and you know that you can be of, and I think most doctors probably want to do great good in the world. But sometimes the reasons you go into stuff, you work through it, and those aren't the same reasons that you continue to do it anymore. Does that make sense? So, but I mean, for me, I've always wanted to, I love people. I've wanted to help people. I want to be involved. And I just had a very strong creative side and a very strong scientific side. And so I had to pursue both.
Why did you choose ophthalmology?
I've always loved the eye. I find it's very fascinating, and it's for lack of a better word, it draws me in. And then it's, I'm the kind of person, I like quiet, and I didn't know this. Right now I look back and it makes sense. The eye clinic, the ophthalmology clinic, you do a lot of your exams in the dark, mostly if you wanted to. Some people do their exams with the light on, but you do it in the dark. It's calmer, it's quiet. Your surgeries, you get to do surgery, which is cool, but it's microsurgery. It's kind of very minute, which I liked. And you get to do the surgery sitting down. I'm a much more sensitive person. I'm an HSP, kind of highly sensitive person. It's a trait. And those people do much better with calm, relaxed surroundings generally. I mean, I'm go, 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 obviously. Or I can be very passionate, but, and do things, but I like the calmness, and to have that as a consistent thing. Now I realize, and also you get to play with lasers, which is super cool. It's super cool to play with lasers.
I'm sure there's been a lot of advancements as well to heal the eye through lasers, through different type of technology. So you've kind of been probably through this process where your field has been going 180 miles per hour as far as advancements and healing and making people see.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the past 15 years with injectable medication, ophthalmology is really, really accelerated in terms of being able to help people, help babies, help older people with macular degeneration, people with diabetic retinopathy that otherwise would not have had the ability, we wouldn't have had the ability to really save their sight.
Would you say that's the most rewarding part of your job, the gift of sight?
I think ophthalmology, the ability, and I became a retina specialist, so it was really powerful to be able to have someone come into your office and say, I can't see, my eye went black 2 hours ago, and you look in and you say to them, you have a retinal detachment, I can fix it for you in the office. Of course there's always risk, and you talk to them about the risks, but if you don't do anything, it's not going to go well at all. So let's do something. I can fix it for you. Let's do it. Let's get started. It's wonderful to have that ability to help someone.
I love it. So as if that wasn't enough, you got a few more degrees after that, MPH, and then a master's in health and medical sciences. Why did you not stop? Why is there more stuff that you decided to kind of get? How did that impact or help you grow as a physician?
So I went into a 5-year medical program between UC Berkeley and UCSF, and it was accepted 12 people a year. And while I was there, and the idea was to train humanistic physician surgeons. And while I was there, I was like, okay, well, it's a 5-year program. I'm learning amazing stuff, really being stimulated. At the same time, there's UC Berkeley, which is an amazing public health school, and I was learning stuff on individual. I was learning information on an individual health level, how to help the individual, which I think is the most sacred part of medicine or health care. But I wanted to see about how to take care of population health and learn about that. And it was an amazing public health school, so I did that as well. So I got my, I remember I got master's degree. No, I got a master's in public health, a master's in health and medical sciences, my medical degree from UCSF, and I had a baby all in 7 years. I look back, oh my gosh. But the things I learned, that knowledge, no one can take away from you, right? The knowledge, the things that you learn and you study, no one can ever take it away from you. And it puts pieces together in the puzzle, right? No one ever knows the whole thing, a clear picture. We all know little bits of it, but it puts your puzzle pieces together so you can at least have your view in a much more clear way. And now I see the work that I'm doing now with suing the state of California, with talking about public health and our COVID interventions. I mean, it started with me studying molecular biology at UCLA. It started also with me studying performing arts, right? The advocacy work that I do and the face that I put out into the world. Like all of these things, the public health work that I studied, going to Africa and being part of a public health initiative and research project there. All of these things, you know, you look back and you're like, oh, these all came together. And then there's also my own health journey. All of these things kind of make you who you are and help you kind of go forward. Hopefully, if you process them the right way.
So before I interrupted you were kind of explaining how you had a deep passion and love for acting, and so you did that. And then recently you also, I don't know if it's recently or not, but you're also a filmmaker. So you acted and produced in an Academy Award eligible Window Horses with Sandra Oh and produced Sinjar about the Yazidi genocide of 2004. And help me unpack that. Like, when did the acting then become to producing, where you started doing filmmaking? And if you want to touch on the story behind the Yazidi genocide, which I actually don't know anything about, but I'm assuming it's very dear to you to be able to tell a story about it. So I'd love for you to touch on that as much as you like.
Sure. I started working when I was doing performing and going on auditions and taking the classes. I was going on auditions and working on projects I didn't really fully believe in, right? Sometimes, and when you're, in a place where you're trying to make it, sometimes you act, I don't want to say desperate, but like, you're just like, I'll take any job, right? Because you're trying to be advanced in the field. But at a certain point, I said to myself, I really want to work on things that are of value to me. And I'm already becoming a doctor. I have X amount of time aside from that. Let's just work on projects that like I really love. And so I slowed down, especially during residency and fellowship. Like I really focused on medicine. I wanted to just focus on that. I focused on my research. I named an eye disease. So the performing took a back burner and the creative side took a back burner. But then when I came back to Los Angeles after doing my training and I got, can you hear me or is there noise in the background?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So after I came back to LA, I was like, okay, I'm more established now. And I just kind of said I'd like to get involved. I didn't know how. And then I found out about this movie called Window Horses. And I actually heard Sandra Oh on the radio talking about it on public radio. And there was one other time this has happened to me, but this is about like tuning into that inner voice, that inner knowing. In the dark, driving home, I saw stars. I felt something amazing. And the only other time that it happened to me was when the night I met my husband. Something told me go to this party and I met my husband. So I was like, okay, oh my gosh, I'm feeling that feeling again. I got to go forward. So I just went home. I wrote the director. It was a movie about Iran and intergenerational, intercultural bonds, Iranian poetry, and multiculturalism. It's just all the things that I really loved. I'm all about creating connection. So, and I think this is something that for your audience, I would love to just pass that message on. If there's something that your inner knowing is telling you to do, go for it. And just put yourself out there. So I emailed her and she came back and they actually needed help. And so I got involved and I'd done some, you know, and I helped them kind of get more into in the Persian community, get more seen, and helped with fundraising and just got into it. And by working on that, I already had done a voiceover training as well. So then I got involved as two characters. I played two characters on the movie, and then I helped produce the movie. So these things grow, they develop as you take those first steps. And so much of my life before had been about like, I just want things to, I'm just hoping to like for something to come to me, right? But it was like slowing down, seeing what is opening, and then going for it, which was really, really helpful. In terms of going after my dreams. So that film was a feature-length animated film that was Academy Award eligible. It was 27 films that year that were eligible for Best Animated Feature, and that was one of them. And then again, that was a film I loved. And then with Sinjar, it was the Yazidi genocide of 2014. I, again, followed this inner knowing and met up with some potential producing partners in Spain. And one of them, she and I really hit it off, and she said, I'm directing this film, and she was looking for someone to help produce it. So we did an international co-production between, we have a production company here called Genius at Large, and our production company worked with them, and we made this film, the Yazidi genocide. Again, it's something that I love working on, projects that I'm passionate about. The Yazidis are a group that were in Iraq, and ISIS came in 2014 and basically killed off the men and the older people and the older boys, and kidnapped the women and the young boys and the young girls. And ISIS is very, you know, you think about these people and you think they're backwards, but they're actually very organized, right? They're so organized, they get money from other organizations and other people and other interests. They're so organized, they actually take these people and they have slave markets where they have these kidnapped Yazidis and they would sell them, and people would say, oh, I'll take that one, I'll take that woman, I'll take this person. And so with the film, we have, and the film is called Sinjar, it's 3 women's perspectives, someone who becomes a freedom fighter for the Kurdish, the Yazidis are a Kurdish population in Iraq. Someone who's a slave, essentially a sex slave and a house worker, house slave for an ISIS supporter, and a woman whose son goes and joins ISIS from Spain. And you see their lives kind of are intertwined, and you see the issue from different perspectives. And so that film got picked up by a distributor, which is really, really rare for an independent film to have a distributor. But we're really excited, and we won some film festival awards. So I'd like to get that seen more in America.
And the creativity doesn't stop there. There's also you doing ballet. You want to talk a little bit more about ballet performances?
Sure. Well, I'm not the ballerina, but but I had a very great opportunity to be involved in the White Feather. So Tara Qasemieh, who's the only one of my dear friends, she is the only Persian American prima ballerina in North America. And after what's been happening with the new Iranian Revolution within the past year, she had always felt like she wanted to create something. So she created the White Feather, and there's a mother who is a character in the ballet, and she asked me to play the voice of the mother. And so I begin the ballet with an interlude, or an exchange between my daughter and the mother. And so there's the ballerinas dancing, and you hear my voice and my daughter's voice over that first 5 minutes.
Your daughter was in it too. That must have been pretty interesting.
No, the girl who plays my daughter.
In the one.
Yeah, but so again, I brought all my passion, all my my own desire for that maternal, and the reclaiming of that maternal to feel, for people to feel more solid within themselves. I brought that to the character. I brought the feeling of and the desire for calm and peace within to the character. Because when we have calm and peace within, that's how we can then, as the character, the main character, goes on to fight the bad guys in the Iranian Revolution, you know, she uses that inner strength to go forward. And I think the role of the mother is very essential in creating that for each of us.
I love that. So speaking of fighting the bad guys, and you talked about the Iranian Revolution, and I know just how much of your advocacy work has been, you know, preserving freedom and democracy. And earlier this month, you testified in front of members of Congress's Select Subcommittee on COVID in Washington. I want to now transition to something that I feel like intertwines really what the Woman Life Freedom Revolution is about. You know, the freedom of speech, the freedom of equality, the freedom of, there's so many freedoms that we take for granted.
Yeah.
And when we're living outside of places like Iran. I want you to kind of take me to about 3 years ago where COVID and the vaccines and what can be talked about, misinformation, all this stuff was all brewing at the same time. And here you are 3 years ago. What triggered you? Where did you all of a sudden see that, wait a second, my rights as a physician or my ability to speak based on my expertise and my knowledge and my research on health and medicine was being in many ways quieted, you know, or shut down? Tell for those who have no idea what you've been doing the last few years to basically bring back the freedom of speech within your field. Tell them what you've been doing and what's the latest update and where we're headed.
Sure, thank you. So, you know, 3 years ago when COVID hit, I was confused and looking for answers like so many people were. You were seeing scary pictures from abroad. And I, obviously, you know, you want to do everything you can to help preserve life. But over time, pretty soon, I started seeing that what I was noticing and what I was looking at in terms of data was really different than what I was hearing in the media. And some of the interventions really, I thought, were so extreme, especially lockdowns, you know, prolonged lockdowns, keeping children out of school.
Especially in California.
Especially in California, and especially in Los Angeles, where I live. I started questioning what was happening. And again, I have my molecular biology background where I was looking at the COVID virus. And then, you know, later on when the vaccines were introduced, I was looking at especially the mRNA vaccines and looking at their mechanisms of action and listening to the advisory committee hearings and noticing that people weren't asking the important questions regarding vaccine safety that I would have been asking. Obviously, I'm not a vaccinologist, but I just, with the molecular biology background that I had, I was like, oh, well, they're not looking at potential autoimmune diseases. They're not asking about studies to look at potential recurrence of cancer or latent infection, given the mechanism of the mRNA vaccines and how they work. Why aren't they asking these questions? So I was asking that, and then I was looking at lockdowns, and of course, we learned that in public health school, like every intervention that you do has many downstream consequences, and so you have to make sure that the risk benefits of, you know, or the potential downsides of your intervention are not going to be greater than the benefits, right? So, you know, keeping people's social interactions, people's, you know, breaking apart the community bonds, etc. And are we really helping the vulnerable? And I saw that we really weren't helping the vulnerable. And I'm actually a member of the vulnerable population because we can talk about this too if you like, but I had been very, very sick in the past. And so I'm not fully able, so I'm disabled, and I have some immune system issues. And so I was looking at members of the vulnerable community, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, we're not really protecting these people in terms of increased financial, social, medical interventions to really protect them. They're still going to the grocery store by themselves. Like, that's not appropriate if you're like an old, metabolically unhealthy person. If you really cared about those people, you would be delivering their groceries to their house. You know, so just really.
And sorry for cutting you off, but we still don't know the impact that it has on the children that were masked up, that were, no socialization with children. I mean, that type of compound effect, we don't know. We won't know for 5, 10, 20 years probably exactly the impact that had.
Well, we already know that it's been tremendously negative impact, actually. So we already knew, I think in 2022, that there was data that children born after the pandemic had lower cognitive health markers than children born before the pandemic. So like the lack of socialization was impacting the youngest people who were just being born. And and we also now know that there's a lot of education years lost. So the kids are now so much more behind than they would have otherwise been. And this is another thing that you learn in public health school. When you are lacking in education, when you're lacking in like these socioeconomic markers, that directly affects your future health. So these things are all related. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to myopically take care of a virus.
The domino effect, yeah.
This is the stuff that I wasn't seeing being discussed. And in the beginning, too bad I wasn't on Twitter. I was on Instagram, and I was in like thinking, you know, I wish I'd been on Twitter before, because I would have like seen that, oh, other people are thinking like me. But I was just questioning myself, and it's at a certain point you think to yourself, am I the insane one? Is there something wrong with me? I mean, I know I have my molecular biology degree, I know I have my public health degree, I know I have my MD degree, and I know that maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe they know something better. Now I look back, I'm like, no, I was just in this vacuum of people who thought differently than me, and that was what my social media was telling me. And I was on these physician Facebook groups where people were so reactive. Later on, I found out there were other physician Facebook groups where people were thinking like me. I just wasn't a member of them. I didn't know, right? Now I'm a member of them, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. There's other people who share my views. But in the beginning, it was very, very hard. And so what I said to the universe, what I said to consciousness, I said, I want to be able to develop that inner strength to be able to speak out on what I believe. And I was nowhere near there. 3 years ago, I was not there. But I worked on myself, and I was open to possibilities to develop that deep inner strength to be able to speak out and speak.
Can you touch on that, Azadeh? Like, what is it when you say you worked on yourself? Because a lot of people, they see things, they hear things, they want to speak up, and immediately when somebody you know, admonishes them, they calls them out, they all of a sudden just be quiet because they're like, I don't want to deal with this. What did you, because I experienced it myself 3 years ago, but I won't take up your time about how I went through it. But what did you do to get that inner strength and have the confidence to be like, you know what, even if majority want to go against, I know my truth, I know medicine, and I want to fight for what I believe is right?
So I worked on myself. I had been already after my illness. I had been on a meditation regimen, so I was meditating at that point. I'd already gone to therapy. I'd worked on a lot of my inner issues from my childhood, from being in war, from like family issues. And so this was the natural next step. And what used to happen is if I like said something online, for example, and someone said something really mean or reactive or even called me a bad name, I would immediately like become small and be like, oh, someone's saying something negative towards me, there's something wrong with me, or how could they be so mean, and And I had to I actively built the skill of understanding that whoever is speaking and speaking negatively or meanly is acting in their level of consciousness, and they just have a low level of consciousness, and they don't have good communication skills or conflict resolution skills, or they're being reactive. And so I had to work on that acceptance of the other. And then I had to work on, I have value to say what I believe, and I can say what I want to say, and it's okay if other people disagree with me, and I just have to speak my inner knowing. And so it was a practice. So each time, or not maybe each time, but over time, it just got easier and easier. So then, someone says something negative to me, it becomes water off a duck's back. But it was that mindfulness practice, the meditation that I did, the inner work, the therapy that I did really, really helped. And then it was making the decision, well, this is where I am, this is where I want to be, what do I need to do to get there? Okay, I got to work on not being reactive towards people. I got to work on being kind and demonstrating, being loving and open, and even if someone is acting in a low level of consciousness and being reactive. And at a certain point, you just have to like not give a hoot.
Well, so I mean, like, here's the thing, like, discussions about COVID and vaccine and conspiracy theory, whatever, that was like one of the most like contentious topics at that time. So you were going up against a beast, like, and so you were able to kind of, dig deep and do the work that you did to be able to confidently speak. Tell us about this David and Goliath type of fight that you decided to take on, and give people a little bit more context of exactly the moment that you decided to speak up. Who did you speak up against, and what happened, and where we are right now, for those who have no clue what's happening.
So then around maybe early 2020, I had already been speaking out on my Instagram, etc. But then, and I was very scared, but I decided to like go to a rally. And then I decided to give a speech at a rally, and then I decided to wear my white coat at a rally, right? And I just built, and each time I did it, I was afraid. And I remember sometimes shaking, but then you do it and you're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And people actually, oh, there's someone in a white coat at this rally. Like they look to you and they're inspired by you. And that really helped me. And so it was always, and then I did a personal development course, which also really helped. And in that course, they taught me, always stretch, always push yourself, always go, because your comfort zone is where you stay comfortable. But if you want to grow, you're always going to have to get out of your comfort zone. And that's always going to feel abnormal or unnatural. So that's also another skill I had to work on. Now it's a lot easier for me to kind of push myself, be like, oh, that's my brain trying to make me afraid to go beyond my comfort zone. They want to, my ego is trying to keep me safe, but let's go try this. Let's go do this. And so I was going to rallies, and then there were some laws. So the federal government, for people who don't know, the federal government during COVID really pursued very illegal activities in terms of actively trying to censor public citizens, which is a violation of the First Amendment. They actively worked with academic institutions, and they worked with tech companies, and they also pressured tech companies and social media companies to censor people. So this is completely illegal, and during COVID, they created these channels and pathways that still exist now, and for the next emergency, it's gonna resurge. So what the federal government was doing was illegal. And then in California, our legislature, who thinks, they took that momentum and they took it to a whole nother level, and they made a law called AB 2098, wrote a law that said that, and there was this huge uproar about misinformation. They said any doctor, because they were worried about doctors speaking out against vaccines, speaking out against lockdowns, speaking out against keeping children out of school, and they said any doctor who speaks, the law said any doctor who speaks out against COVID or vaccines or gives misinformation or disinformation can get investigated and have their license taken away. And their definition of misinformation was something to the effect of false information that's against consensus, contrary to standard of care. And I was like, all right, well, this law doesn't make grammatical sense, number one. Number two, so you're saying if I don't agree with the groupthink as a doctor, the consensus, then I'm automatically have my license taken away? This is going to have a chilling effect. It's called, the phrase is chilling effect on speech. So the federal government can, or the government, or the state government too, it's unconstitutional for them to censor you, and it's also unconstitutional for them to make you afraid to speak. That's called the chilling effect. Both of these things are illegal. And I saw this law very clearly, plain as day, is going to have a chilling effect on speech. And it violates patients' First Amendment rights, because you as the patient have a First Amendment right to hear what your doctor's true beliefs are. And if the government is pressuring doctors not to say something, the government is actually violating your First Amendment rights to hear what your doctor really wants to think. This was obvious to me, but it was not obvious to the Democrats in the legislature. Fortunately, the Republicans, and I'm more of a center person. I don't even know what I'm registered as, if I'm Republican or Democrat or independent at this point. I'm pretty center. But for me, I was like, what's going on here? Like, it was completely antithetical to what a free country should be. And being from Iran, I already knew the fear that people have and they stay silent. I'd seen it, I'd lived it, right? I was seeing elements of that starting in America with COVID, or increasing in America with COVID. And it was just frightening to me that there were lawmakers that were fine violating the First Amendment, both federal level and the state level. And so I said, okay, this is crazy. I was feeling really sad. And I remember sitting in my bedroom, the same room, like feeling sorry for myself, feeling sorry for the world. And then at one point I said, I have to act. And then I started becoming active on Twitter. And then as I spoke out more, the opportunity for this lawsuit came to me.
I want to pause and just ask you a question, because actually one of my dear friends, Sherry, who's watching and was looking forward to getting to know you better, mentioning they succeeded. I know so many doctors are afraid to speak out. Her husband is an extremely well-respected doctor, neurologist in this area in South Florida. How afraid, worried, concerned were you that this could end your career?
Oh, I was afraid that they would come after my license, for sure.
Is that why you had the acting as a backup career?
No, no,
No, I'm just joking.
no.
Yeah.
I mean, I was afraid they would come after my license, for sure. And I remember sitting there thinking, meditating, praying, consulting with some people, some women that I really respect. And, ultimately, you have to take responsibility for and decide how you want to live in this world and what you stand for. And I said to myself, even though I was so afraid, I have to go do this. I have to. And so we ended up suing the state of California with the New Civil Liberties Alliance and my co-plaintiffs, some amazing people, brilliant doctors and epidemiologists, really, really smart people. I'm so grateful to be one of the plaintiffs alongside with them, who sued the state of California. And the interesting thing is, like once you take that step off the cliff and you're afraid you're going to fall, you actually realize you're growing wings and you're flying. And we had our first hearing, and the judge, we were very lucky with the judge we got, but he came to court. He's in his 80s. He came to court prepared. He had read it all. He knew, he was seeing it, and he told, I remember this, the deputy district attorney for the state of California, she said, this law makes complete sense. I don't know why they're fighting it. And he said, no, this law is nonsense. And the definition of this law is nonsense, or something like that. And at that moment I said, oh, somebody sees it, thank God. And so important to give the right judge, right? Yeah. Somebody who's like a critical thinker and can see, and he even said in his rule, he granted us a preliminary injunction, which means the government can't come after us while he makes his ruling. And he basically said, this law violates their 14th Amendment right to due process because it's a nonsensical grammar. It's not clear. So the law, any law, has to be clear to a person of average intelligence. And so he said it violates their 14th Amendment. He hasn't made a ruling on the First Amendment, but guess what's happened in the meantime? Just happened within the past couple weeks. The people who were so for this law are saying it's absolutely necessary. Misinformation is a huge problem. We need to go after the doctors, the Democrats in the legislature. And then Gavin Newsom, who signed it, was our Democrat governor.
Gavin,
yeah.
killing me, Gavin. Oh my God.
Yeah. And they've all slowly, silently backtracked. Now they say, oh, this law is not necessary. And they themselves, the Democrats, have reappealed the wording of the law. Because they know they're going to lose in court. They know they're going to lose in court, yeah. Number one. They don't want to look bad. Yeah. And they want to get reelected. They don't want this to be ammunition for them. So this huge uproar a few years ago, we have to go after misinformation, we have to go after doctors. All of a sudden, it's not a big deal to them. That's hypocrisy. Yeah. Hypocrites.
No, I mean, they really thought that everybody is going to be naive and dumb. And a lot of people were for a few years. But they're slowly but surely awakening. We have people like you that are literally risking their medical license for the sake of freedom, for the sake of liberties that us as citizens of this country have, and so like kudos to you for literally putting your neck on the line and willing to sacrifice everything you worked so hard for to be able to do this. So where are we right now? What's the next step? Is there anything that all of us can do to support, or is it in the hands of the courts? Tell us a little bit about the next step.
So the law is hopefully going to get reappealed. So then, then it won't be an issue. I have another lawsuit, then you as you take steps forward, the rest opens up to you. So then there's another law that the California legislature has passed saying that a doctor has to teach other doctors what the state wants them, actually the wording that the state wants, which is another First Amendment violation. As a doctor, I should have the right to teach people, to teach other doctors, like let's say on a surgical matter, anything that I want to teach. The law says you have to teach what the state wants about implicit bias. And implicit bias, like subconscious bias, I think it exists. In my meditative mentoring and teaching, I talk about the unconscious mind and how it's such a driver of our behavior, and how I've had to do the work for myself to undo my unconscious behaviors. But at the same time, the government should not have the right, and does not have a right, to tell doctors what they can teach or what they have to say to other doctors. So we're fighting that next law. So what you guys can do is just, just follow along and spread the message and stand up. I think the main thing is, like, when you see something wrong, stand up. Don't be a follower. You know what's right in your heart, and go forward and be open and understand and be humble and know you might be wrong, but just be open to broadening your view. So that's what you guys can do.
May I ask, I'm assuming, you know, anytime you sue somebody, especially the government and the powers that be, it costs a lot of money. Like, who's funding all this? Who's getting all the lawyers? How are you guys doing all this?
Yeah, so, this is another thing people can do. They can, if they believe in the cause, they can donate to the legal nonprofits that I'm working with. The New Civil Liberties Alliance, great organization that helped with our first lawsuit. And then the Pacific Legal Foundation is the legal nonprofit that I'm working with on our second lawsuit. So that's another way, if people are interested in actually donating money, they can do that to those two nonprofits.
Make sure, please, like, first of all, add it to your bio if it's not there. Anyone that's watching, make sure you follow Dr. Khatibi, and whatever GoFundMe's or whatever it is, this kind of stuff needs a lot of support, because that's really that's what they're hoping for, is that you get weakened financially, you know, because it's just a long, they just keep on dragging it out. Or if there's lawyers that might be watching that they want to support and reach out and provide any kind of assistance, I'm sure you would benefit from that as well, right? You got to get all the Iranian lawyers together. I'm gonna send as many lawyers towards you that are practicing in California, girl. Baby, like, I knew from the beginning that this could be a long conversation. If you don't mind, I want to spend a few more minutes talking about a couple things. We talk about freedom. We're talking about liberties. We're talking about suppressing voices. This is all that our people back home in Iran are being suppressed of. You know, their right to live a peaceful, harmonious, free life has been stripped from them for the last 44 years. How much of what you're doing, the fight that you're fighting as a Californian, as a United States citizen, do you think is rooted in you being an Iranian woman that experienced growing up inside of Iran and seeing how our brothers and sisters have been impacted, especially in the past year? If you'd like to touch on that, that'd be amazing.
Well, they're very related, right? When you grow up in an authoritarian regime, and you grow up with the consequences of having lived under an authoritarian regime, not only like feeling the lack of freedom, the lack of being afraid, but then your family members were under so much stress, and then they have to leave. And that causes huge disruptions in the family unit. And then that can cause a lot of downstream effects in your own emotional health, right? So the people inside Iran are suffering. I also think the people who had to immigrate out, and some of the ones who are more emotionally vulnerable, they ended up really suffering as well. Maybe some of them were financially successful, but the emotional turmoil of what happened in Iran has huge, and the war and all of that has huge downstream effects. So we're all, whether we're in Iran or outside, living with the consequences of this huge disruption in our own mind-body complexes, and then also in our individual cohesive social unit complexes and the lack of cohesion. And so we're kind of playing that out, aren't we? Like, in how we look at the revolution, and then how we look at the American government. For me, in order to get to this point, I mean, for me, my name is Azadeh, right? Like, I was born at the time of the revolution. So I always thought to myself, well, freedom is so important, and how do I manifest that in my life? And ultimately, it was about, like, getting rid of all that subconscious and conscious baggage to really fully be myself and who I am and my true essence. I see when I see people and doing doing activism for the revolution, there's still a lot of baggage that we're carrying. And it affects how we interact with each other. And I think the more we can let that go, and let go of the negative stuff that came as a result of, and sometimes it's partly cultural as well, the cultural baggage, but just the baggage from the war, the baggage from the original revolution. If we can let that go, I think we can get to a new evolution in a much more efficient way, in a much better way. I've seen infighting in this past year among people who all hate the Iranian regime, but they're still fighting amongst themselves. And so that is something that we can address. In order to be able to get to a place where I've been able to fight the US government and the California government, I had to let go of a lot of that. The reacting, right? Like being in stress. Like I'm much more like relaxed about it. Like I was scared and stuff, but I was like, okay, well, let's just go forward instead of like being constantly worried or constantly afraid or like even hating the other person. I actually met one of the people that was my adversary in this lawsuit outside a hotel room right before, like 2 days before, 3 days before the judge, we had the hearing in court, just by accident. Like who goes around and meets their legal adversary on the street? And we had a conversation. In the end, I asked him if I could have a hug, like we could hug each other, and we had a wonderful hug. So that for me has also been important. Like how do I shed these layers so I can really just manifest love? Fighting for freedom is a manifestation of love. Hugging my enemy is my manifestation of like being loved. And I think that for Iran and our next step, we need to learn how to do that. How do we love our enemy? That's a big. I mean, that's how do we love the person who has perpetrated so much evil in our country? These are big questions.
Power to you if you're able to make that happen. And actually, that ties into the second thing that I wanted to share at the end is that you mentioned that you teach and you mentor in the fields of mindfulness, and you said the highly gifted and the highly sensitive, particularly living, thriving lives and reducing health disparities and strengthening society. It's very clear, and you alluded to it to some degree about your personal health struggles, your personal trauma through being an Iranian, born and raised in Iran and coming here, and all the stuff that you and I and millions others can resonate with. Can you please, in closing, touch on what you're doing right now to teach and mentor about this amazing field?
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. When I got very ill, I realized that part of the reason, a huge part of my reason for being ill was, and this is scientifically backed, that there are certain people in our population, about 15% of people, that have 50% of our disease burden. So 50% of our healthcare expenditures goes towards this population. 50% of all office visits goes towards this 15%. 50% of all diagnoses are made in this 15%. So, but the data also shows that if you actually meet the emotional needs of this 15%, not only do they do better than everybody, not only do they do as well as everybody else in terms of health problems, they actually are healthier than other people. They're actually more successful than other people. So it's a very vulnerable, malleable population that actually can do better than other people, but they do worse. So I realized, oh, I'm actually a member of this population, the highly sensitive. Another name for them is from the biomedical model. We call them orchid adults and children. But and then that realizing that adverse childhood effects, no matter even if you're highly sensitive or not, this adverse childhood effects affect the events like divorce, war, trauma, a parent going to jail, domestic, physical, emotional abuse. Decades later, it results in health problems like heart attack, cancer, autoimmune disease, etc. And the more of these adverse childhood events you have, the higher your chance of getting illness decades later. Putting all of this together, and then also realizing that 87% of people who are highly gifted are also highly sensitive, and our jail population also, like I think 20% of our jail population is gifted individuals. Like most criminals that are in jail are incredibly smart. Like this 4%. Wow. Right, because their needs weren't met in childhood. Nobody recognized it, or they didn't. So they found another way to act out or try to be successful. And unfortunately, they got caught. Well, not unfortunately, fortunately, they got caught. But so putting all of this stuff together, for me, I decided to do what I can to help myself, help my children, but also put that outside and so now I mentor highly gifted people, highly sensitive people, and their children. And along with the meditation, which I think is such a great baseline for everybody, no matter what your neuropsychological profile, to really get to a place of calm. And so you can think clearly, you can be healthier, and your mind body, which is just one entity in my view, can be, aligned and you can go forward and get whatever you want to get. You want to fight the state of California? Go do it. You want to go create peace in Iran? Go do it. And so I think the basis is to really strengthen ourselves and fulfill ourselves first. And understanding your own neuropsychological profile, where you fit on that spectrum of not sensitive or sensitive, has huge impacts on how you can then understand yourself and then understand your place in the world. I am an advisor. I'm sensitive. I am someone who feels empathy for others. I notice things deeply. I can understand subtle things. I can think very deeply. I can think very broadly. And those are my gifts. Well, what are your gifts? What can you bring to the world? Go for it.
Well, I don't know about anybody watching, but I got goosebumps because you're just you're saying such amazing things, Azadeh. I mean, first of all, I'm very proud of you. I'm genuinely proud of you. I'll tell everybody watching here is that last night at dinner, I was with my mom, my sister, and I read Azadeh's bio, and like my mom and my sister were absolutely flabbergasted. And you just need to know that you are an incredible human being. As an Iranian, I'm incredibly proud of you. I think what you're doing is incredibly impactful. It's inspirational. What you're doing is quintessential Shirzan characteristic, both from a California level and just what you're doing to make sure that other people have the guidance and the support and the advice that you've learned from your own personal experiences. And that's amazing. You're making your mess your message, you know, and I just hope that everybody follows you, supports you, and that you can continue to make the impact that you innately want to make, you know, whether it's through the medical field, whether it's through filmmaking. You're a storyteller, Aziz. But I'm telling you right now is that whatever you're going to end up doing in life, the biggest impact you're going to make is just continuing to storytell. And the things that you've experienced in life, you just have to figure out in whatever medium that feels comfortable for you, whether it's IG lives, podcasts, filmmaking, acting, whatever it is, you're going to make an incredible impact on the lives of many, many people. And I'm so glad that I had this honor and privilege and opportunity to get to know you just a little bit, because you're too amazing to have in a 1 hour conversation. But thank you so much for making time, and thank you for everything you're doing out there. I've had so many arguments with so many people about COVID and the pandemic and Californians and Democrats that I'm so glad that I see another Iranian that is willing to stand up and be able to take all that heat. So we appreciate you, and I'm sending you a lot of love, and you have our entire community supporting you. I have no doubt about it.
Thank you so much, Imanjan. Thank you for being a connector in our community and for elevating the conversation and for creating spaces to have these discussions. It's so, so important. So I thank you for your time, and I thank your audience, and I really appreciate you.
My pleasure. Keep us posted. Literally, anytime that you have any kind of update with what's happening in the courts in California or all the other great things that you're doing, I want to do my small part to amplify all the amazing things that you're doing. I have no doubt that everybody that watches us now or later on YouTube is going to want to learn more about all the great things that you're doing. And wishing you a ton of health, and thank you again for all that you do.
Thank you. I'll keep you posted. Much love. Love to everyone. Bye-bye. Love you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together virtually for Dr. Azadeh Khatibi. What an incredible powerhouse of a woman. If you enjoyed that conversation, if you enjoyed getting to know this incredible woman, a little bit at least, make sure you show her a lot of love, message her directly. If there's any way that you can possibly support all the efforts that she's doing, it's clear that this is a gifted individual that is somehow able to balance so many different things. And I feel like whether it's through the suing of California, whether it's the mentorship that she's doing, whether it's from the acting or the filmmaking, that individual needs more support, because I can't imagine her doing all that stuff without getting some great support from fellow individuals, perhaps fellow Iranians. So I love that conversation. I loved this opportunity, and I want to make sure that I continue to showcase amazing Iranians. So please, if you know an awesome Iranian, if there's somebody out there in any industry that you're proud of, that is doing something amazing but is not getting the due recognition, please message me with their Instagram bio. Let me know what it is about them that you find to be awesome, why you think they should be highlighted. This show has so much potential. It really does. But it needs all of you all who keep on showing up and watching to help it. Keep the engine going. Keep on making recommendations. If you know of somebody that wants to help and intern and just kind of make things more efficient and effective, so I can do more of these episodes, because I really, really would love to do this, and I think our community really needs to have more of these kind of conversations. Please reach out to me. Don't be shy, and let's continue to put a spotlight on the most awesome Iranians on the planet. If you're in South Florida next Tuesday, September 26th, join us for Barefoot in the Garden at Platform. Link in the bio for more information. The ultimate environment to get together, to have a great social and networking opportunity. Good food, good drinks, good vibes, good music. Link in bio for more information. See you all soon. Ba umide Azadi. Take care.